Welcome, welcome, y'all. Without further ado, I am going to go ahead and introduce our Gen Z Leaders panel. We are so very excited to have Gen Z leaders in the movement to end violence and oppression in Wisconsin. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Welcome these Gen Z leaders who continue to fight for justice and equity, collective liberation in their own spheres of influence. People in the chat, welcome our Gen Z leaders, y'all. Gen Z leaders, you want to say what's up, peace, wave hello. We've got Ajani Carr, Siab Vang, Kwnwahta Smith, Nadxely Sanchez, Cayo, and Zion Rogers. Welcome, welcome, everybody. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to remind folks that are tuning in to please use the hashtag 2021 Virtual Teen Summit throughout our time together. 2021 Virtual Teen Summit throughout our time together. Welcome to our panel, Activating Our Power and Leveraging Our Privilege. We're going to go ahead and get started, y'all. So let's jump right into it. Let's bring up Ajani. Ajani, if you could share your name, your pronouns, the city and town or community that you're from, and some areas of work that you're passionate about. And then maybe one quote that you want to share with the audience tuning in today and why that quote is resonating with you. Go ahead, take it away, Ajani.
So first of all, thank you guys for having me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to see that we're doing this virtually. But my name is Ajani. It's Ajani. I'm an actor. I'm a hip hop artist, and I'm also very passionate about the community. And about just helping our people, the people in general. You know, giving support and letting people know that you're not alone, and empowering the youth. You know, a quote that has been stuck in my head lately is a simple one from J. Cole. He says, you ain't never gonna be happy till you love yours. And that's something that I feel like fits the whole topic of today, because, you know, sometimes we think about the things we don't have, or the places we haven't reached yet, and, you know, completely skip over, forget about the things we do have and the people we do have around to love. So yeah, that's a very important one to me. And oh yeah, and I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Chicago, but I also spent a lot of time in Madison, Wisconsin. So yeah, I'm just a Midwest born type of dude. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm happy to hear from everybody else too.
Welcome, Ajani. Let's jump over to Casey. Casey, can you share your name, your pronouns, the city or community that you're from, some areas of work that you're passionate about, and a quote that you would like to share with the audience today, and how come that quote resonates with you? Go ahead, Casey.
Of course, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Cayo. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I'm from the Milwaukee area in Wisconsin, but I'm living in La Crosse, Wisconsin right now to study at school. I'm a college student. I am very interested in queer liberation and racial justice movements. There's a lot of stuff happening here in La Crosse. I'm running for office over here to advocate for tenants' rights and renters' rights, and to advocate for a housing first initiative for the homeless community. And recently, a quote that's been living rent-free in my head has been that it's not enough to be compassionate, you must act, which is especially pertinent as a white person. It doesn't matter if I feel bad that things are happening to communities I am not a part of, if I'm not doing anything about those things, basically, if I am not advocating for those folks as well. But yeah, it's nice to meet everyone. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome, Casey. Welcome, Casey, y'all. Let's jump over to Keshia. Keshia, go ahead and introduce yourself, your pronouns, city, community you're from, areas of work you're passionate about, a quote that resonates with you, and how come that quote resonates with you, with our audience today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So exciting. My name is Yeshia. My pronouns are she, hers, or anything so with love and respect. And I am from central Wisconsin, small town Stevens Point. And some things I'm passionate about is um, gender justice, queer justice, racial justice, and anything that has to do with liberation. And one quote that really speaks to me is from Maya Angelou, and she says, "Do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, then do better." And I think this really speaks because we are all learning and growing, and as we are on this space, we should take this knowledge of knowing better and really do better for our community and for ourselves and for our peers.
Welcome, Kishia. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's jump over to Nadxely. Go ahead, introduce yourself, pronouns, city, community, areas of work you're passionate about, a quote, and how come it resonates with you, with our audience today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nadxely Sanchez. My pronouns are she, hers, ella. I am from Milwaukee, the south side of Milwaukee to be specific. Some areas that I'm passionate about, I'm very passionate about immigration reform and abolishing ICE and racial justice. One quote that resonates with me, it's a quote that I found almost a year ago and I still have it saved everywhere. It's by Kiran Sharma and it says, "And baby girl, just remember no castle was built overnight." And it just keeps me grounded and reminds me every day that nothing with true value happens overnight or happens just like that. Everything takes time and everything will come at its own time too.
Thank you so much, Nadxely. Welcome, welcome, y'all. And folks that are tuning in, please jump into the chat or jump into the comments and introduce yourself as well. Who are you? What community are you from? What are some areas of work you're passionate about? What's a quote you want to share with the audience? And how come that quote resonates with you as our Gen Z leaders are continuing to share? Let's jump over to Zion. Zion, go ahead.
Hi everyone. My name is Zion Rogers. I am 17 years old. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. An area of work I focus on would have to definitely be Black liberation. Anything centered around uplifting Black people and Black people only. That's all me. A quote that is resonating with me would definitely have to be, no one, it's an Asada Shakur quote, "No one is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them." And that quote is definitely resonating with me in this season of my life currently because I'm doing a lot of work in the field of education and centering education around Black youth. So.
Dope. Thank you, Zion, and welcome. Let's jump over to Kwnwahta. Go ahead, Quinn.
Hey everyone, Sagoli Slugwake. My name is Kwnwahta Smith. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm part of Oneida, Wisconsin. I am from the Oneida Nation. I am Wolf Clan. And the areas of work that I'm really passionate about, I'm passionate about ending gender-based violence, promoting healthy relationships, but I'm also really passionate about climate change, indigenous rights, Black Lives Matter, youth empowerment, racial justice, gender justice, abolishing ICE. I feel like a lot of these issues are very intersectional. They all come together, so to end one way, to helps the other. So a lot of these things, are interconnected. And a quote that I really love, and I feel like, I'm coming close to kind of saying it a lot, too much. People are getting sick of me saying it, but it's from Maya Angelou. And she says, "Courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. You can practice any virtue erratically, but nothing consistently without courage." And I always tell people when we go to these events, when we go to workshops, or if we're in uncomfortable situations, how we need to be courageously uncomfortable, right? You know, you're not necessarily in danger when we're uncomfortable. A lot of people feel like we're in danger when we're uncomfortable, but you're just uncomfortable. And we gotta fight it through and be courageous. And I feel like that helps me with a lot of my growth. So I encourage you all to like internalize that as we go through these workshops, and continue to be interactive with it and be courageously uncomfortable with these topics and with these discussions. So I appreciate you having me here today.
Thank you so much, Kwnwahta. All right, y'all. So again, if you're in the chat or you're on Facebook Live following us and tuning in, go ahead and drop your name, your pronouns, the city or community you're from, some areas of work you're passionate about, and a quote that you would like to share with others today as we continue on in our Gen Z Leaders panel. So let's keep it going, y'all. The focus of our conversation is activating our power and leveraging our privilege. Let's start with the first part. In our lives and as part of movements and organizations, we play different roles in the pursuit of equity, collective liberation, and justice. As a Gen Z leader, what are some social change roles that support the way that you activate your power around some of the passion areas you named in your intro go around? So Cody, can you go ahead and share that social change role slide for us? And then we will start with Yeshia on this one. Yeshia, again, as a Gen Z leader, what are some of the social change roles that support the way that you activate your power around some of the passion areas you named in your intro go around?
Would you like me to wait for the graphic to show up first?
Yes, if you could, Yeshia.
All right. Hopefully everyone can see the amazing graphic. So I think I thought about this a lot, and for me, it's all the roles. All the roles have worked together to really support me and where I am today, to be able to push for the changes that is needed. But I think if I had to pick two, I would definitely say storytellers and caregivers. Without the stories of the Hmong women who has paved the way for me to be able to be here today, I would not have the knowledge that I know. And then definitely all the caregivers in our communities who are continually taking care of us as organizers, and making sure that we can thrive even when society is oppressing us.
Thank you, Yeshia. Let's jump over to Kwnwahta. Quinn, as a Gen Z leader, what are some social change roles that support the way that you activate your power around some of the passion areas you named in your intro go around?
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, I do have to agree with Gashia talking about how a lot of these social change roles, I think a lot of us can relate to, connect with, and it can be hard to pick one or two. And like for me, it kind of depends on the spaces I'm in and the different roles that other people bring to that space and what role I can bring that is best needed in that situation. So sometimes I'm needed to be a disruptor in those spaces. Sometimes I'm needed to be the caregiver in those spaces, the weaver. And I think a lot of times I find myself as a caregiver and a weaver, but a lot of these different spaces I can really see myself interacting in these social change roles. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, Quinn. And again, participants in the chat or in the comments section, name some social change roles that you take on in your community and in your spheres of influence as our Gen Z leaders continue sharing. Casey, go ahead and take it away.
I also identify with a lot of these, but I would say more than any of them, I find that I am a disruptor in almost every space I end up being in. If it's not me going and getting arrested in Washington, D.C. or in the state capitol for something I believe in, it's me chasing down representatives to ask them questions on camera, Accountability 101. It's me showing up in spaces invited as an intersex person and asking questions if they don't want me to. It's me running for local office in a really small town. I would be the first intersex representative in Wisconsin history. I love being uncomfortable and I love making other people uncomfortable because when you're uncomfortable, you're growing. So I'm always just causing chaos.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you, Casey. Let's jump to Ajani. Ajani, what are some of the social change roles you take on in activating your power around some of the passion areas you named in your intro go around?
Man, I read this about 10 times before we even got on here. It was so hard for me to just cram it. But I feel as though me personally, I identify as more of a storyteller and visionary because everybody can't speak and everybody can't put a message out there, but everybody is in the community. We are going through a lot of the same issues, a lot of the same problems. So it's important to have people that can speak out and let people know, you know, this is where attention needs to be put at and focused on. But, you know, I have a great deal of respect for people that are caregivers and healers in our community because there are people that's doing the grassroots work and really in the communities every day trying to help out the youth, trying to let us, you know what I'm saying, have a environment of inclusiveness and love, but they don't get as much attention or as much support as they should, opposed to the police, you know. So I identify with storytellers, or being a storyteller, but you know, I have a lot of adoration for people who are caregivers and healers, people that are in our communities on the front lines.
Thank you so much, Ajani. Let's jump over to Zion. Zion, what are some of the social change roles that support the way that you activate your power?
Really just following the sentiments of the other panelists. I really can identify with many of the social change roles, a few being builder, visionary, a disruptor, guide, specifically disrupting and building. Um, I occupy and am passionate, like I said previously, mainly with Black liberation movements, um, ensuring that Black children and Black youth are receiving the education they need to challenge the status quo. So, continuing, really, a lot of my work aligns with building and creating space for Black youth to continue to learn and challenge and ultimately want to challenge the oppressive systems we live amongst.
Thank you, Zion. And last but certainly not least, Nadxely, tell us more about the social change roles you take on to activate your power around some of the passion areas you named in your intro go around.
Just like the others described, it was very hard, and I could resonate with a lot of the roles that are on this slide. But after deep thought and looking at this for like almost 20 minutes straight, I identify myself more in the caregiver and frontline responders just because of the work I've done. So I am a trained marshal, and whenever there's protest or anything, I always make sure that everybody else is okay. And that comes into play with my privilege too. I am a white Latina, so usually I'm not picked on or I'm overseen like over the summer with the Black Lives Matters protests. I would always make sure um, if anything would be if anyone would be arrested, it would be me. Same thing with immigration protest. When it's an immigration, there's so many cross cultures and so many statuses that you have to keep in mind. And I do have the privilege of being a citizen, so I always take that into consideration. And whenever I am a natural caregiver in any sense, so I'm always telling people, hey, you need time to stay or you need somewhere to stay. My place is open. Somebody needs a meal. Okay, I got you. I love cooking. I'll meal prep for you for a week. I don't mind. That's just, yeah, some of the two main roles that really, really stood out to me.
Thank you, Nadxely. All right, y'all. So the next question I have for you is, as Gen Z leaders, some would say the weight of the world is on your shoulders, right? We always call to our young people to lift us up and take us out of times that we're experiencing. We also see far too many young folks and even adults in the work burn out, right? Die early because of the commitments that they have taken throughout their lives in the name of justice. So I would like for you all to share a little bit more about what and who sustains you. What and who sustains you? We'll start off with Nadxely on this one.
So right off the bat, my community is a big influence. Like I said, I am from Milwaukee, so you see so many disparities and so many injustices was just within our city. And just knowing that it's unjust, that's what keeps me motivated. But those that keep me grounded, I have to say it's the women in my life who have always been there to support me and encourage me. So I know without my mom, even though sometimes she doesn't agree with what I do, she keeps me motivated and she always reminds me to be safe. My mentors, I've been blessed to have so many of them, and they're all incredibly strong women. I know one of them is an actual, like, she's a keynote. She's Miss Ebony Lewis. Without her guidance, I know I wouldn't be the speaker who I am. Without Miss Paris, who she's mentor of mine from the Boys and Girls Club, I wouldn't be in the college where I am.
Thank you, Nadxely. Casey, what and who sustains you in this work?
It's definitely other activists and activist movements, as well as visionaries, if we're talking about social change roles. I mean, I would not say that I am like the unique creator of any of the ideas and progressive movements that I fight for. But when I go to those groups, if I'm just having compassion burnout, or if I have too many compassion tabs open in my brain and I need help focusing on one or two key things that I can do individually right here, right now, I will go to different progressive movements and activist groups or people who I just know are doing work in the community. I'll be like, okay, I'm focusing on too many things. I'm losing my mind. What are some things I can be doing? What tools can I bring to you? What resources can I give to you? It's definitely other people in the movement who are sustaining me and giving me energy. And we are constantly reflecting and resonating with each other and gaining energy from each other.
Absolutely. Thank you, Casey. Absolutely. Movement family is sometimes what we call it. Absolutely. Thank you. Ajani, who and what sustains you in this work?
Something that sustains me is just the idea that, or knowing that, you know, everything is supposed to change and everything is supposed to keep going. And as we get older, the younger generations are supposed to keep changing things and shifting things. And so when we have hard times, hardships, and it feels like there's no hope, you know, I just try to remind myself that the younger kids coming up, they're gonna be better than us and they're gonna have a better idea about the world because they see people of different genders, of different races, of different all aspects of life, and they feel like that's normal. That's how the world's supposed to be. So the more we keep shifting and the more we keep spreading that love and compassion that needs to be in the world, the better it'll end up being, you know. And also just people who are, like I said before, in the community working. I go back to Chicago, I see people like Dan Latiker. I go back to Madison, I see people like Will Green, you know, just really working to make sure that the youth out here, they know that, you know, you're supported and you got somebody that got your back, you know. So just seeing that, seeing even people that came before us, like the great Fred Hampton, you know, their stories and their resilience give me a lot of inspiration to keep going.
Thank you so much, Johnny, and congratulations on starring in that role in the movie and in the documentary on Fred Hampton. If you haven't already seen the documentary, y'all, please tune in. You can find it, I want to say, still on HBO Max. Johnny, can you tell us where else?
Yep,
I believe it's still in theaters.
Yeah, it's still in theaters and it's also on HBO Max. It's amazing, so please check it out if you haven't already.
Thank you, Ajani. All right, let's jump over to Keshia. Who or what sustains you, Keshia?
Yeah, I think like thinking about, again, echoing what other folks said, like remembering those who have paved the way for us, and then also continuing to, pave the way for those after us. And then another shout out, I think the people who really help sustain me is definitely the Hmong women in my life, but also like my Southeast Asian queer organizers who really like, check up on me. And I owe it all to them for really teaching me and also, paving the way for me too.
Thank you, Keshia. Zion, who and what sustains you?
So I know specifically within the Milwaukee community, I've been blessed to be surrounded by and to watch as I've grown up. I've been blessed to just watch so many different activists and organizers within my community that are currently in their prime, and then those that have gone before me. It's just been beautiful to see them continue to do work that promotes and perpetuates social change specifically for Black people, and then for them to plant seeds within young people to want to do the same things for the people. So just seeing that has been beautiful, and knowing that there are young people that are being inspired, like it is within them, the revolutionary spirit, the liberatory spirit is burning within them. Knowing that is definitely one of the things that keeps me grounded.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Zion. And last, Quinn, who and what sustains you in this work?
Yeah. As I was listening to this, a lot of people, I have to 100% agree with a lot of the things that sustain you. But specifically when it talks about burnout, I feel like this is an overused kind of quote that advice that people hear, but like boundaries. I feel like boundaries is so important. So we don't burn out. We can keep moving forward in this work, and that's boundaries with our friends, our family, and the work that we do. Man, and I'm not perfect at that. I think that's something that has to be worked on every day. It's really hard, easier said than done. And I'm getting a little bit better day by day, and you can feel and see the difference when you set those boundaries. And so I'm able to still be involved with people in my life and activities that might take a lot of the energy from me. But setting that boundary for that time where I'm also able to be really involved with people in the activities that really re-energize me, like get me going. And like, shout out to my mom, Beverly Scout, like she sustains me. A lot of the women in my life, really good for me, friends and family who are just like there to help me with my growth. And Casey talked about that compassionate burnout, having those people in your life that are just loving, that really helps sustain. And working with the youth, something about their working with the youth is very, inspiring and fun. I'm still a youth. I'm 21, but people who are even younger than me, when they, they say ideas and things that get them excited, it excites me. So, working with young people as well. So a lot of different things that kind of go into that of staying sustained in this kind of work.
Thank you so much, Quinn. And my next question, anyone can answer. We don't necessarily have to do a go around, so I won't call on each of you. My next question is, how does the role that you name or the roles that you named, the social change roles, I know that many of you all couldn't name like, your top two because we take on all of those roles in different spaces and in different situations, right? But what are some of the ways that your privilege connects to the roles that you named? Or tell me a little bit more about that. And anyone can answer that if you want to come off of mute.
I'll definitely say that I grew up with a lot of duality in my life. So, I grew up poor. I grew up seeing different things and being affected by things like gun violence. But in a lot of ways, I stayed out of the way, and I was able to utilize my knowledge of things I learned, things I seen different than the people around me to grow. And I know a lot of people that I grew up with that I know personally, they didn't get that chance. They my age in prison right now, or they my age and passed away already. So just knowing that I'm still here, that I still have a chance to do something, and I still, have a voice to speak out for those people. I see that as a privilege of mine. I see that as something that not everybody else has. So, just being able to storytell, being able to give support to those caregivers that don't get enough of it, that's really important to me.
Thank you, Ajani. Who else, y'all? Who else wants to share a little bit about how the roles that you named in the previous questions connect to your privilege?
Yeah, hey everyone, this is Kwnwahta. I kind of want to go to like the disruptors. I think a big thing that plays into that for me is my privilege and the spaces I'm in. When talking about when I talked about courageously uncomfortable, I think a lot of times we have to take in consideration that the privilege I may have in those situations and the power that comes with it. And, the other people who are in that situation, if they don't have that privilege and power, that could actually be a dangerous situation for me, but I'm safe because I have that privilege, I have that power. So me being able to speak up or put myself in those situations, to use my privilege as like a weapon or a way to fight back against the oppression, as well as to hold friends and family, help hold them accountable for like the words and the actions they hold in those spaces. If I'm a man and I'm in a group of other men and they're talking problematic stuff about, women or different things, that's my space to speak out to them and check them and what they're saying and how it can be problematic. If I'm a cisgender man and there's people being transphobic and there are a bunch of cisgender people, that's my space, my privilege to use to speak on them on that and educate them. I feel like a lot of ways my privilege kind of gets portrayed in those aspects.
Thank you, Quinn. Other panelists want to speak to that question about how the roles that you named in the previous questions connect to your privilege?
Yeah, Yeshia here. I think one thing is that, as a cis hetero woman and also Asian, like when we go to places, like we're actually in the front lines because we have that privilege, right? So if we're going to a rally or a demonstration, and we know that we actually are the ones who actually need to be in the front line, not to save, but actually be the ones who get arrested for, our Black brothers and sisters, right? Or, our queer friends, right? Like that is not safe for them. And I think like for a lot of us, like we should use our privilege in that way. I think it's, yes, conversations is good, but also like, being in the front lines and actually putting your body, right? Because I'm also able-bodied where I can actually do that. And I have the privilege to have so many resources that I'm able to do that as part of my privilege.
Thank you, Yeshia. Nadxely, Casey, Zion, any reactions or things to add to that question about how the roles you named in the previous questions connect to your privilege?
Yes. Although I am like my gender and my sexuality create a lot of barriers for me. I've been homeless because I've been queer. I'm part of the working poor. I get denied housing and work. My whiteness automatically means that every single one of those intersections will be made easier for me. Homelessness is very systemic, but I am white and I am out of it. And I just need to be very mindful of how my whiteness makes being a disruptor so much easier for me, why I can put my body on the front line as often as I do and walk away from those situations. Being white and being a disruptor, and being white and just being in any social justice space, like any activist space where you're trying to make things easier for other folks, we just need to be very mindful of the space that we are taking up and where the mic would be better suited, I guess, whose hands the mic should be in, because it definitely should not be mine. I am not a monolithic experience of every person in my community.
Thank you, Casey. Zion or Nadxely, anything you want to add?
I could agree on some aspects with Casey in terms of knowing when to step up and when to step down in terms of the space you're taking up. As I mentioned, I am a white Latina and I do not resonate all of the other experiences that other Latinx go through, especially when they're Latinx who are darker than me. And that's always something I take in consideration. Like people have mentioned too, when we're at protests or we're at marches or an event, something where anything can go wrong, I always know that in that aspect I am a bit safer than my Black brothers and sisters, just because of how unjust our society is and how the system works. And in terms of age, I am 19, so I know I'm a bit more able to do that. I am a little bit more I could be a little bit more carefree. I don't have as many responsibilities as maybe older folks have in terms of bills or even a family. So I don't have to worry about that. But yeah, it's always just keeping in mind what spaces you're in and what space you're taking up.
Thank you, Nadxely. Zion?
I know personally for me, in terms of social class, my privilege has definitely been having access to certain resources and certain opportunities to get involved in activism that a lot of Black youth I feel haven't had. I just feel as if a lot of different organizations, well, specifically within my city, I'm not really sure of anything outside of that. They have trouble maintaining and reaching youth that fall. There's almost like an hierarchical oppression within that, and I feel that they've had trouble maintaining youth that didn't fit the status quo or didn't have access to certain things. So I feel definitely within my activism, one of my main focus is to continue to give up space for them and to continue to build and create opportunities for them to speak and change and challenge.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zion. And again, folks who are tuning in on Zoom or on live, feel free to answer some of the questions that I'm posing to the Gen Z leaders in the chat. Share this video far and wide and begin the conversation, right? The Teen Summit is only a one-year event, a one-time-a-year event. And it's awesome and it's dope and it's brilliant. And it really does matter what we do in between these events to make a difference. And so some of my next questions, thank you, Cody, for advancing the slide. We know that particularly in the United States, because of our identities, we experience areas in our lives in which we receive benefits or privilege, and in some areas in which we receive disadvantages and oppression. Whether it's intentional or not, conscious or not, it's likely that we are socially ranked in these ways and within these categories. Where we fall in these categories make a difference in the access, opportunities, and comforts of our lives. So Gen Z leaders, I want you to name, and I know you already named some of them, but I want you to continue to name some of the categories that you identify with, and talk about how it connects to your privilege. How do you leverage these parts of your identity in the passion areas that you all named earlier? So again, name some of the categories that you identify with and talk about how it connects to your privilege. How do you leverage these parts of your identity in the passion areas that you named earlier? And we'll start off with Yeshia.
Okay. So I don't really know how to answer this question, but I think you know, um, something that I really connect with this is that I am actually born in the US, right? But my parents are refugees. my community, we have a lot of refugees. And I think, growing up, I was not connected to, the stories of my family being refugees. But I think, as ICE started showing up in our communities, I grew more passion into abolish ICE because I knew that, it affected other communities, but I didn't see how it was affecting my own and how, you know, we're all connected. And so I think like out of all of these, like something that has come up to me new is that, my privilege is I'm US born, and the privilege that I don't have to think about, someone coming to break my family apart. So yeah.
Thank you, Kishia. Thank you so much. Zion, what are some of the categories you identify with? And talk about how it connects to your privilege.
Just a question. So the categories in terms of the ones that were previously discussed.
Oh, sorry. The what we're sharing on the screen now is the social rank categories around age, disability, religion, ethnicity, those ones there. So it's likely that, again, whether unconsciously or not, we are put into one of these categories of either agent or target. So my question was, how do you leverage some of these parts of your identity in the passion areas that you named? Or how do these, the categories that you identify with connect to your privilege?
So, more so speaking to the last question I answered, in terms of creating and building space and opportunities for youth who I feel haven't had a voice. I know me, like I've said, I've had access to, I've been blessed to go to a school that values education and that centers education in those areas. And also speaking more so to the activism, I've been blessed to be surrounded by people and to have had opportunities to grow and be exposed to different things. And I feel that as if a lot of Black youth haven't been exposed to these opportunities. So
Mm-hmm.
in terms of my activism, I really and have really been honing in on creating more space for them and finding creative ways to do so.
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Zion. Ajani, how about you? What are some of the identities that you are part of, and how do you leverage those parts of your identity um, in the activism work that you do or in the work that you do?
Well, one thing is, I'm 18, so I'm young. I don't have any disabilities. I haven't had to deal with going from another country to here, and knows the discrimination that comes with that and the hardship that comes with that. So it's a lot of different things I realized I didn't have to go through. But again, I'll bring up that duality of being a Black kid, Black youth coming up in a certain type of environment. I pretty much dealt with the same things that everybody else dealt with, but I was able to travel. I was able to go to Cali, back home. Bro, them, they ain't never seen a palm tree. So, in those little things, those are things that change somebody's mindset, because now there's something more out there. Now there's a avenue you can take. You know what I mean? And being able to talk to different leaders and OGs in the community and being able to soak in that game, I feel it's important to bring that back home, because a lot of us don't have that access, you know. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ajani. Nadxely, what are some of the identities that you leverage in the passion areas you named?
So in terms of that, I've really had to focus in on the resources that I've been able to obtain too. So like some of the panelists have already said, my family, they are undocumented. So I was born here. I didn't have to always worry about being snatched up. I had to worry about my family and my loved ones, but it's not to the same extent. And then going out, that alone gave me opportunities to go out, to travel around the US, to travel outside of the US, something that my mom still cannot do. She still cannot see her family, and that's always something that kind of hits me, because I can't imagine not going a day or two without talking to my mom or even seeing her. And then I've been blessed with being able to go to college debt-free. I've been blessed with being able to get opportunities to intern for Congresswoman Gwen Moore, and to talk to the governor. And that just always reminds me that not a lot of people, and especially in our Milwaukee community, experience that. And that's what that's what I'm always trying to remind myself of when I'm out in the streets or when out and with an organization. So like with Voces de la Frontera, I know that a lot of students aren't open to that, because a lot of the students I work with come with an NPS, which is the Milwaukee Public School System. And even within that school system, I came from that school system, and nothing has changed in terms of how they prioritize their education or how deep and rooted the school to prison pipeline is. It's hard to always fight that, but I always do my best to, if I hear about something in my college, I always give it to my youth. I'm like, guys, like, this is open to high school students, apply. I got y'all with the word of mouth.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nadxely. Casey.
I am in a situation where a lot of my target ranks are things that you need to get to know me to find out. Like, you wouldn't look at me and know that I am queer, that I am not a Christian, that I am poor, that I am an intersex non-binary person. But what you do see from face value is my whiteness. And that's something that I can use to benefit other communities, and I try to actively do in all of my social justice work. People are less likely to hurt me at protests and rallies than Black, Indigenous people of color, so I can physically put my body in front of them in those spaces. It also means I can take real uncomfortable and risky actions to make change or to raise awareness with minimal harm to me and minimal backlash to me. White people will tone police Black and brown bodies all the time, but they'll be more likely to listen to people who look like me, which is awful, but that's a different essay. But they will listen to me tell stories and talk about issues that are happening to communities that do not look like me. And that is a powerful privilege to have, and definitely one that we can use with our friends, family, lawmakers, on an interpersonal and intrapersonal level. We can be having those uncomfortable conversations because we have a privilege of looking white, of looking light-skinned. And until we are able to topple pillars that uphold that sort of oppression, that puts me in this really superior space that I do not deserve, we can use that to bring other people down to our level, to get them involved in work like we are doing. Little conversations matter.
Absolutely. Thank you, Casey. Quinn, let's close this out on this question.
All right. I have been thinking long and hard, and I'm appreciating everything that everyone has been sharing with us, and how I wanted to answer this question with the variety of different privileges that I hold that, you know, may not even be listed on this social rank category. There's so many different privileges out there with colorism and other different things. I think I always end up coming back to being one, able-bodied, and two, being a male. And the able-bodied part, why that I keep coming back to that, is that there was a time where I went paralyzed, waist down. And, there's a lot of times where we like to think we understand like obstacles that people go through when they are, have these, they have disabilities they have to face with, or they have other things, other oppression kind of stuff that they have to deal with, and actually experiencing it kind of has a whole different kind of way of how you can make those connections with with that disability in itself, and how every daily things can be so convenient and so easy for certain people, and how to go out there and be active in this movement. Oh man, being able-bodied makes a huge difference with being able to hear, with your speech, with how you can walk, of less obstacles, because accessibility is still such a hard and huge thing that the US has a problem with. We try to be accessible in a lot of different ways, but there's so many cracks that just make it harder and harder for them in those areas. Trying to be more mindful with that. And then with my male privilege, I feel it's just a huge thing I have to use every day in my spaces. There has been a time where I was in a space where I was the only male and it was a bunch of women. No, sorry, my apologies. I was one of a couple male, and then there's a woman with me, and she was giving these amazing ideas, but people pushed her ideas aside and spoke on, like, they kept brainstorming with each other. And then I readdressed her ideas, but reworded it a little bit differently. And they were like, wow, that's such a great idea. And I would like to think it was because of the way I worded it, but you have to understand that I think a big part of that is because I was a male in that space. And so I had to, acknowledge those credits to that person. I was like, well, they inspired me. They said this. It was basically what they said. But people just don't want to hear other people, or they just don't process unbiased. They have their biases, implicit biases we have. So things like that we just have to give credit where credit is due when we get inspiration from those people, and things like that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, Quinn. Again, folks, if you're tuned into the chat or you're connected and following us via live, feel free to answer these questions in the chat, in the comments section. And then also, if you are connected on Zoom, please use the question and answer option at the bottom of your app or your computer or tablet. And let's collect some questions for the panelists, Gen Z leaders, after we're done with our questions here. So if you have particular questions for any of the panelists, feel free to go ahead and send them via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. My next question is, as Gen Z leaders, what is one thing you hope youth and adults take away from our conversation today? As Gen Z leaders, what is one thing you hope youth and adults take away from our conversation today? Let's start off with Zion.
I think the biggest thing that I would hope that youth and youth and just everyone will take away from this panel, this conversation, be to, in order for a true liberation to occur, risks have to be taken. Things have to be given up. I know specifically with me, like I mentioned previously, in order for true liberation to occur, that means that I have to leverage my privilege and be willing and open to give up my space. So essentially, really just risk taking is what true liberation would entail. And that's a message I would want everyone to take away from this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zion. Let's jump over to Casey.
One thing that I hope everyone takes away from this panel is that anyone can do the work in some capacity, and that the work can look a lot of different ways. It can be creating a chapter on your campus. It can be just having conversations with your friends and family. It can be going to rallies and protests. It can be presenting legislation on a Congress floor. You can do it in any way, and it's all valid ways to be a part of whatever movements you are passionate about. It is never too early or too late to join a movement.
The time is now. Absolutely. Thank you, Casey. Ajani, what is one thing you hope folks will take away from our conversation today?
The biggest thing I want people to take away is, just to stay strong, do the hard work, because when you do the hard work first, the easy things of rejoicing and the good feelings come later, so stay positive when it's the hardest thing to do. Stay strong when it's the hardest thing to do. Because you can say, I only ate this today, but it's somebody out there that ain't ate for 2 whole days, it's always somebody that is going through maybe the same thing you are, something worse. So just know that you're not alone, and that it's people that came before you that have done that same work and stay strong and stay resilient. So do the same thing.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you, Ajani. Nadxely, how about you? What's one thing you hope folks take away from our conversation today?
As we all see with the panelists, like we're all pretty young in terms of where we are age-wise. So I always want people to remember, no matter who they are, that no matter the age, you have power, and you have power in what you do every single day, especially our youth. Our youth are and will be the next generation who will be leading everything, not just in the US, but around the world. They are the ones who will continue the fight after we're done. They are the ones who will make the world a better place. And to always, always keep the youth in conversation when making big decisions. Because I know organizations struggle with that all the time in terms of keeping the youth included and in keeping their voices heard.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nadxely. All right, Quinn, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of just want to go back to saying that it is okay to be uncomfortable. I think that's a huge one for me. It's okay to be uncomfortable. You know, when we're uncomfortable, a lot of times that's when we're learning, that's when we're growing. And if you're always in comfortable situations, you're not growing, you're not learning. If I find myself in comfortable situations all the time, I know that there's something else I have to do to grow and grow in different areas. So that's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable, be courageously uncomfortable, and that each and every one of you are powerful. You all have a voice. You all have power with that voice. So use that power. Use that power. The time is now. Like Casey said, it's never too early. It's never too late. You know, fight the good fight and never give up.
Thank you. Thank you, Quinn. And Keshia, want to close us out on this question?
Yeah, I echo what everyone else said, but I think one thing that I want to remind myself and everyone here is be gentle with yourself. I think sometimes we tend to really like push ourselves, but be gentle with yourself, especially during these times. So yeah, be gentle with yourself again.
Thank you so much, Keshia. All right, moderators that are helping me on the back end. My hope is that some questions have come into come to us via the question and answer chat. So if y'all could let me know which questions to lift up for the Gen Z leader panels to answer, that would be super helpful. And something that I just want to say, y'all, is these are 6 Gen Z leaders that we're here sharing with you all today. But I want you all to be mindful that we are the leaders we've been waiting for, right? We as individuals are the leaders that we've been waiting for, right? So I want to give it up to our Gen Z leaders for being here today, sharing their gifts of wisdom and knowledge with us today and their experiences. But I also want us that are tuned in to recognize that we are the leaders that we've been waiting for. All right, and so let's get some questions coming into the chat for our Gen Z leaders, y'all. What do you want the Gen Z leaders to answer? All right, we've got a question here. What was your favorite part of your journey in becoming a Gen Z leader? Who would like to answer that question? What is your favorite part of your journey in becoming a Gen Z leader?
I could go first on that one. So I started off in high school when I was 14, turning 15, in terms of getting involved in activism and just community work in general. I think it's one of my first memories of ever leading a protest. That was one of my favorite parts because as a collective, Youth Empowered in the Struggle, which is a branch from Voces, we worked on organizing and nitpicking this event. And when we saw the community impact and when we saw the amount of people that came out, it was something something that I have never felt in my life ever. Just seeing everybody coming together for the same cause, for the same action. And yeah, just that whole memory is something that has always stuck with me and still sticks with me.
Awesome. Thank you, Nadxely. Two other Gen Z leaders want to answer that question about what was the favorite part of their journey in becoming a Gen Z leader. We'll get two other Gen Z leaders to answer that one.
My favorite part about becoming a Gen Z leader was working with actually like activism elders and seeing where they've been, like what grounds they were able to cover in their work, like in just in their time doing the work, and learning from them, and then navigating the space as we like take the mantle from them and move further than where they were before. And I don't know, I love working with the elders in the queer community and just different communities that I've had the honor of working with or learning from.
Thank you, Casey. One more Gen Z leader want to answer that question?
I can answer. I definitely will have to say, I know I mentioned previously a lot of my work is centered around planting seeds and creating space for more young people. Um, Definitely one of my favorite parts about this journey has been seeing so many like young people that I've worked with blossom, and a lot of them haven't even worked specifically within the activism field, but seeing them blossom in other area of their life, like that has been beautiful to see.
Thank you, Zion. We've got another question, y'all. What are the biggest barriers you've faced and how have you overcome them? What are some of the biggest barriers you've faced and how have you overcome them? We'll get two of you to answer that question.
I'll jump in first. I'll be very honest. This is the most honest I've been on a public platform about this, but I went through a lot when it comes to, being pushed around by the police, being, seeing a lot of doors slammed in my face when just trying to, do something positive in the community. In a lot of ways, that took a lot of hope from me, at a certain point in time. I felt like it was going to be a long time before we could see the change, and that we could actually make a difference. But, being able to see events like this, the last teen summit that I went to, there was an open mic, and seeing all of the young people, just rejoicing, giving everybody love, even when it was different types of arts that we might not even be necessarily accustomed to. Everybody was just sharing that love and compassion, and seeing things like that gives me a lot of hope. And Stephanie, you guys, I feel like you guys grasp the concept of you can't talk about things you want to do for the youth without including them in it and letting us lead and letting us, influence each other. So, seeing the work that you guys do, seeing the work that everybody in here is doing, whether you're a panelist or one of the participants, because I know everybody is a part of the revolution. Everybody is a part of the change that we're gonna see. So that hope is something that keeps me going.
Thank you, Ajani. Appreciate that. Much love. Who else wants to answer that question? What are some of the biggest barriers you faced and how have you overcome them?
I can go ahead. I think one of the biggest barriers was, not under. I guess when I was, younger, I didn't understand why people didn't listen, and I think one of the biggest barriers was the men in our community, and then also the white people in our community. We had, you know, two groups that were going against young Hmong girls, and I think like, people when people are constantly making comments at you, you just that's a huge barrier to overcome. And I overcame it because, you know, like we're fighting for something and, you know, we want liberation and we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you, Geshe. And we will bring in one more question from the chat. Apologies, y'all, for not getting to everyone's questions. But we will be able to get in one more. How do you address toxic masculinity and patriarchy in your communities? How do you address toxic masculinity and patriarchy in your communities? Let's
Come
have
on, Quinn, let them know. Come on with it, bro.
Who would like to answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, since I got called out like that, yeah. How to address how we have to address toxic masculinity and patriarchy in our communities. Man, I think this one a little bit connects to the last one. I think one of the things, the last question, I mean, about like obstacles and things like that. I think the first foremost is like with myself. With the toxic masculinity, the patriarchy, and I could be my own worst enemy sometimes. And I have like a hate-love relationship with being held accountable because one, I love it because I grow, but two, I'm very, very stubborn sometimes. And man, so people get frustrated with me, but you know, when I have time to think about it, I realize where I'm in the wrong and I'm able to grow from that experience, and then sharing that knowledge with my peers. You know, with the other men in my life. We have a men's group here at Wise Women Gathering Place. You know, it's community men working together to like have those issues, have sweat lodges together, and to work on a lot of these different issues to support each other. So I was, you know, really cool with that. But man, toxic masculinity is so very prevalent in my community, with my own friends. Childhood friends, you know, bringing up in middle school, high school type stuff, where it's a constant conversation with each other, to try and to educate and to grow other community members. So that's what I have to share at my moment.
Thank you, Quinn. Let's get one or two of you to answer that question as well.
So obviously I identify as a woman, and in the work of activism and organizing, usually when it's a woman involved, people tend to overlook them when it's mainly women who are involved in this work. Personally, I tend to be very loud and open about my ideas, and I present myself in a way where it just radiates confidence. Because I've been in positions where I go and men just overstep and don't listen, which is very hard considering that usually not just myself, but a lot of the women I work with, they have amazing and incredible ideas and they're not listened to. So it's just the fact of keeping your confidence and standing your ground.
Thank you, Nadxely. Thank you. One more response to that question, y'all?
I can add in something too. I think that we're talking about toxic masculinity and patriarchy, because it is not my job to teach men and boys. I talk to my young girls, my youth, about, you know, how we can stop shaming and policing other women and girls in our lives. But then, you know, me being part of the queer community, I've also learned that toxic masculinity is not just between a male and a female, but it's also being femme and being masc, and you know how toxic masculinity shows up in that. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Geshe. All right, y'all. It is 3:45. I'm so excited. I'm so uplifted. I'm so motivated by our Gen Z leaders today. Thank you so much for the questions, y'all. I just
Did she cut out for y'all too?
Yeah, I think you muted.
Stephanie, where'd you go?
Steph, you're on mute, my love.
Okay, so what did you hear? I don't know if y'all heard anything, but I'll start over. I just wanted to give so much gratitude to our Gen Z leaders for being here today. Thank you for those who tuned in and asked really brilliant questions. Apologies, we couldn't get to all of them, folks, but it'll all, continue the conversations. I dropped a link into the chat. It's a SurveyMonkey Day 1 Teen Summit evaluation. If when you disconnect from our time today, if you could go ahead and fill that out, we'll be entering your names into a raffle. And we'll be sending folks D2K merchandise. So make sure you fill out our day 1 evaluation using that link. I think Yeshua just dropped the raffle link in there. But the evaluation is what I'm wanting folks to fill out. And then we will enter your names into the raffle and send you some D2K merch if you win. But I wanted to just close with a couple of messages that our Dare to Know campaign lifts up. So right now we're live on our Dare to Know page. If you haven't already followed us on Facebook or Instagram, please do. Some of the messages from our campaign are all about promoting healing and healthy relationships. A quote that we always share with our Dare to Know campaign is from Dr. Corinne Sanchez, and it goes, "As we heal ourselves, we heal our ancestors, and we transform the future for our children." As we heal ourselves, we heal our ancestors, and we transform the future for our children. Right. And so please check us out on Instagram or Facebook and follow us on the Dare to Know social media platforms. Cody is going to be launching some polls for us today in closing, and a couple of other messages that I pulled from the Dare to Know campaign. And literally you can find some of these messages right on our Dare to Know campaign. So Cody has launched some polls for us today. So if y'all could go ahead and complete those. I'll pause and actually give us some notice to the day 1 polls here. So one is select the region of Wisconsin you're in. Select the region of Wisconsin you're in. And there may be some folks that are not from Wisconsin. So no worries. Go ahead and jump in the chat if the options are not reflective of where you're tuning in from. But if you are from Wisconsin, we would love to know where you're tuning in from. So we'll give 30 seconds for y'all to complete that poll. And then I've got some closing messages from our Dare to Know campaign before I pass it back to Louis Katkak, 2021 Menominee Brave, to close us out in song. So we got the poll. All right. Lots of folks from North. Oh, okay. Wow. I'm kind of surprised at the percentages here. New Jersey, Milwaukee, Alaska, Minnesota. Dope. All right, poll number two. How many teen summits have you attended in total? So is this your first time? Have you been to the teen summit 2 to 4 times, 5 to 7 times, maybe even 8 or 9? How many teen summits have you attended in total? Give folks another 20 seconds to answer that poll. All right, let's see. Lots of folks, this being your first time. All right, maybe the virtual option is meaning that more folks can engage with us from different spaces and different places. So some benefits, right, to this virtual option. I know I want to be back in person because there's nothing like it from my perspective. However, it's a pleasure to be able to provide this opportunity for many of you all that sometimes can't make it to in-person events. So thank you all for being here. And we've got one more poll, one more cool poll. If you could have one superpower, which one would you choose? If you could have one superpower, which one would you choose? I see some of our Gen Z leaders are like, all of the above. If you could have one superpower, which one would you choose? Remember, folks, I would love it, love it, love it if you can use the hashtag 2021 Virtual Teen Summit as you reflect on day one together. Or in your social media platforms, you reflect on your experience today. That'd be great to track some responses alongside the evaluation that we invite you to fill out so that your name can be entered into a D2K merchandise raffle. All right, poll closed, poll closed. Okay. Cool. Thank you, Cody, for launching those polls, getting our folks engaged. A couple of messages before I pass it over to Lewis to close us out for today. And again, these messages are pulled from the Dare to Know campaign that is all about promoting healing and healthy relationships and centering Gen Z leaders in that work, right? All of the content that you see on Instagram and Facebook on our Dare to Know platforms are generated and created, co-created by young people, right? And so these are some of the messages that I want to share with you all today. Make sure your definition of loyalty includes yourself. Make sure your definition of loyalty includes yourself. Your relationships are activism too. Your relationships are activism too. There will always be someone who can't see your worth. Don't let it be you. There will always be someone who can't see your worth. Don't let it be you. And as we close out Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month and Black History Month, we invite you all to make sure you're doing the work 365 days a year, y'all. 365 days a year, right? And so remember that there will always be someone who can't see your worth. Don't let it be you. Thank you so much, Gen Z leaders, for being here today. Again, sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your experiences with us. Thank you, participants, for tuning in via Zoom or via live and being engaged with us in this virtual space. Thank you, everyone that are part of the planning committee, and gratitude to our sponsors that have put forth their funding and their resources to make a space like this possible. Gratitude to everyone that has been part of making this event possible. And with that, I will pass it to Lewis. Let's give it up for our Gen Z Leaders panel, y'all. Give them some claps, snaps, good vibes, affirmations in the chat as we say, see you again, never bye, see you again. And we will bring up and spotlight Lewis Kak to close us out in song.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, Lewis, we can hear you all right. We did see you for a moment and now you're not, now you're there. All right, awesome. Yes, Lewis, go ahead and close us out.
Okay. What are you telling me?